President Cyril Ramaphosa has painted a bleak picture of the country's unemployment and poverty levels. In a State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa said millions of South Africans are unable to provide for themselves and families, citing the ongoing load shedding as one of the biggest threats to the country's food security. Charity organizations such as Chefs with Compassion are taking it upon themselves to lend a hand in fighting hunger in the country. Chefs with Compassion has delivered close to 5 million meals to food vulnerable communities. Now, for more on this, I'm joined by Chef Coo Pillay, Chefs with Compassion founding director. Chef Pillay, appreciate your time this afternoon. Just give us some background to the history of Chefs with Compassion. When was it founded?
Good afternoon. So Chefs with Compassion started back in May 2020, and that came obviously through an urgent appeal. As you know, we were in a very hard lockdown when the COVID pandemic broke, and immediately people found themselves destitute because there was a loss of jobs, loss of income, and people became even more food insecure. I mean, we've always had a food insecurity problem in the country. We've got a very high hunger stats in the country, and that just was catapulted even worse in the time of the pandemic. And that's how Chefs with Compassion started. Through our partners, we built our model on 3 pillars, being rescue, cook, and feed. Because it's amazing that we have such a high hunger stat in the country, but at the same time, we have an immense, it's actually mind-boggling, the amount of food that actually gets wasted. And this is where we came together to say, let's go and rescue the food before it gets to the landfill. And there's nothing wrong with the food. It's just that we've got all this produce, but nowhere to go. So we approached farmers, markets, manufacturers and producers, and we went and rescued the produce before it would get to the landfill. And then we convert those in our cook model into nutritional and healthy meals and serving it to the communities. Because the other quite interesting and actually more concerning fact is that some of the communities that we feed, the average person eats 3 meals a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's astounding. A number of things come to mind when you talk to us about the amount of food that is actually lost. But where I'd like to start is the 5 million meals that you've served over the last almost 2.5, maybe 3 years. Now talk to us about where are these individuals across the geographical divide of South Africa?
So the majority of them are in the Greater Gauteng area that we service between Pretoria and Johannesburg. But this is also part of the 5 million meals also includes our Mandela Day campaign that we successfully ran for the last 3 years, which is the 67,000 litre for Mandela Day. And we served about 900,000 cups of soup over these 3 years through Mandela Day. And Mandela Day is obviously a national project that we embark on. So 900,000 meals came through that nationally. And then just over 3 million meals were served in the Greater Gauteng area over the last 3 years.
So I'd imagine that one of your challenges, certainly not a shortage of food to cook, because you talk about the amount of produce that is available. But obviously there are other elements or other costs and other challenges certainly that are around the process of preparing a meal for these vulnerable individuals. Talk to us about those issues.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, the produce is there, but it's now a matter of getting it from the various resources and then obviously getting into our kitchens and then getting it cooked and ultimately being distributed. So logistics plays a major role in that. And unfortunately, the cost of fuel that's increasing. We also have a database of volunteers that give off their time. And we also pay them a little bit of a transport allowance just to get to our various kitchens and to our share house. And then obviously we need to run our share house because we've got, storage facilities where the produce comes in and it's sorted out. So all of these, unfortunately, have a hard cost attached to them. And that's where we are reliant on the private sector and the greater South African community for their support in keeping Chefs with Compassion going to cover these costs.
Now, how do you ensure quality and safety of the food that you prepare? Because obviously this is a big part of it, and as a renowned chef, I'm sure it's something that you do.
Absolutely, and that's the heart of Chefs for Compassion, because we are chefs that have come together to obviously cook and feed people in need. And most chefs that, actually all chefs operate a very high food safe kitchens that they operate, and hygiene is one of those biggest facts that we have to operate under, and that's the same mindset that we bring into all our kitchens. So we ensure that firstly, food that is not for human consumption does not come into our kitchens. Food is, all the food that we rescue goes through a sorting process. We ensure that only food that is for human consumption gets put forward, and then the preparation kitchen that we have is under very strict food safety and hygiene controls, and from there also the food then gets put into the cooking side of the kitchens, where these are cooked under very stringent conditions. It's kept under watchful eyes by our food safety officers, and then ensure that they are packaged and then distributed to our various locations.
So what would a typical day look like for one of your chefs?
It's almost like a master chef ready, steady, cook challenge, because you actually don't know what you're getting. So, there might be a day where we just get a pallet of produce, or there might be a day where you might get a truckload of produce. It all depends, and we don't know what we're getting. And I think that's what also gives our chefs that much more creativity, because it also depends what our food rescuers are actually rescuing out from the markets and the farms. So there might be a day you might have 10 tons of butternut, or, I still recall the day when we had 8 tons of loose green beans that came onto our share house, and we were like, okay, what do we do now? And we actually became quite creative with green beans, and having said that, 4 tons of mayonnaise.
Wow. Now, is an option to sell some of the stuff that you rescue? Because I'd imagine that if 4 tons of a particular product comes in and you can't cook all 4 tons, and with Eskom and the issues around load shedding, you can't store it either for too long.
Yes, so this is why, we are so reliant on our volunteers, because the moment the produce comes in, and because with our limited resources, especially now with the electricity shortage, we try to get the produce sorted and moved off the share house as quick as possible. We do not want to sell any of the produce, because that's not part of our ethos. It's all about providing meals to those in need. And ultimately, we are a rescue organization, so we don't also want to throw the food away, because it also goes against our values. So this is why we are so reliant on our volunteers and the resources that we have, so that the moment the produce comes in, it moves out the share house almost immediately.
So when you've served multiple millions of individuals and obviously meals, there's got to be an impact that you've made on the communities that in which you operate. Talk to us about this, and how does it make you feel, when some of those faces light up after receiving a meal?
It's actually unexplainable. When I'm actually on the ground and I actually go into these communities, it's such a humbling moment that, a plate of food makes such a difference to those in need. I mean, things that we take for granted. I eat 3 meals a day, and I'm quite content with what I eat and things like that. And then when, and like I mentioned earlier, when you find out that people only eat 3 meals for the week, it puts a lot into perspective. And for me, it's such a humbling experience. And at the same time, people have become reliant on Chefs of Compassion. And they look forward to those meals when they see those vehicles and the communities that actually help us distribute meals to the various areas.
So how do we rally behind you? How do we rally behind Chefs with Compassion in assisting whether it's cash or kind?
So, there's so many different ways of getting involved. Either, as you said, there is the monetary donation that actually goes a long way into sustaining our volunteers as well as our share house. But also, if we can get a supplier or a donor to help us cover costs like our fuel, or even us, having a share house that we don't have to pay for, all of these resources helps us actually do what we can and even do it bigger and also help other areas that are in need. And so this is why we are reaching out to both, the corporate sector as well as the general public, because we believe, and as our tagline for Mandela Day is that every litre counts. When it comes to donors and sponsorship, it's every donation, no matter how small or big it is, goes a long way in sustaining what Chefs of Compassion does.
Well, Chef Pillay, talk to us about plans and goals for Chefs with Compassion, certainly looking to the future.
So obviously, the biggest goal for us is to grow nationally. But again, we've got to conquer a province at a time. But our long-term goal is to be, providing nourishment and sustainable meals across the country. 2023, come July, 67,000 litres will definitely be back. That is a project that has just grown in leaps and bounds, and we actually have people coming to us to find out how can they get involved. And we're so proud. When we first started, it was just our kitchens getting involved with 67,000 litres, and over the last 2 years, especially, just to see everyday South Africans getting involved, that for us just shows us that you don't have to be part of Chefs of Compassion. You can make a difference in your own community and your own area. But this is where we want to rally the support of the greater communities and across the country, as well as the corporates, to help us achieve these goals that we have in place.
Now, share with us those contact details for those that are keen to get a hold of you and assist in one way or the other.
So our website is www.cwc.org.za, and all the information to Chefs of Compassion is on there. And if you want to donate, we have a donate page that there is a link on the homepage, and you can also help us on a monthly basis. So there is a monthly donation that you are able to sign up for, or a once-off donation, as well as if you want to keep up to see what we are doing. We are on all social media sites, and obviously it's at Chefs of Compassion, but all the details are on our website at cwc.org.za.
Chef Coo Pillay, I appreciate your time this afternoon, and keep up the magnificent work that you're doing for South Africa.